Hi guys, Brilliant Little here from your Land Partner and Property Developers Academy, coming to you today for your next instalment, today's instalment of 100 in 100, instalment number 66. And we, following yesterday's instalment number 65, Introduction to Funding, we're delving a little bit deeper into funding with each subsequent session within this kind of mini series. So effectively, what we want to cover off in this session is looking at firstly the kind of initial structure of funding. We're going to go into funding structures in a lot more detail in a subsequent video, but for this initial video here, I want to talk about senior debt. So first of all, before we get into senior debt, I want to discuss what's called the capital stack, and that is the makeup of the funding to fund 100% of the project. So in order to kind of illustrate this, I'm going to just try and share a whiteboard on screen and give you a bit of a visual kind of a visual demonstration and visual example of what I mean by the capital stack and the 100% of the funds. So the best way to explain really is that we've got a triangle shape here, and it makes up 100% of what we call the capital stack. So that's 100%. The capital stack is 100% of all your project costs. So 100% of project costs. Okay. Now this capital stack can be divided into, it usually is divided into at least 2 sections, but possibly 3 sections. Now, depending on, amount of money, where you're getting the money from, and factors such as this, it can just be one lump of funding. If you've got big pockets yourself, for example, or you're dealing with investors that have got big pockets, you're backed by investors that have got big pockets, and you can fund 100% of project costs from one source, then obviously the capital stack is only made up of one source. So it's kind of made up of all equity. So you're putting in all equity, and that's either done on a bit of a return basis plus a profit share, or just a straight profit share, depending on your arrangement. But typically what you find is that you've got an equity piece, but then you've also got a debt piece as well. So the debt piece is what we refer to as senior debt, which I'm going to go through now. So you often find that the capital stack is divided often into 3, but it can be 2. So at the bottom here, you've got your senior debt, and that's what we're going to be discussing in this video. In the middle section, you've got mezzanine finance, and then in the top section, you've got your equity. So let's move that across a little bit. Right, so your capital stack, 100% of project costs, senior debt at the bottom, mezzanine in the middle. As you'd find a mezzanine floor in a property is in the middle, and then your equity at the top, which takes you to 100%. So obviously senior debt is the bedrock of your development finance generally. So as the name suggests, it is senior to everything else. So therefore it usually takes first charge. So you typically find senior debt from a specialist development finance company, banks, institutional lenders. As I said, they take first charge, and usually they fund up to 65%. So we put up to 65% of your GDV, or 80% of total cost. Now, obviously, that isn't 100% of the cost. Hence, the fact that we've got to then plug that gap with equity or a combination of different finance types. So, senior debt 65% usually. You can get different, this isn't a rule that's set in stone. Some companies, might offer slightly different terms, but as a general rule, your senior debt is up to 65% of GDV or 80% of total cost. But it also can be up to, when we're looking at purchase price, it can be up to 70% of your purchase and up to 100% of your development costs. So as you can see, that translates to quite a big piece of the funding. Hence, it's the senior debt. Now, typically, the cost of capital for senior debt it can range quite a bit, and the ranges will often depend on obviously where you're getting it from, your relationship and track record potentially with that lender, but also your experience as well. So it typically, a good kind of range if you're looking at it is probably between 5 and 15% per annum on a return. So obviously, the more experienced you are, the better relationship you have with that lender. You perhaps lent with them a few, you borrowed from them a few times, and you've delivered, their money, etc. So you're seen as a safe pair of hands. Then you're likely to access lower rates. You've obviously got to take into consideration all the fees involved in terms of arrangement fees, exit fees, all these kinds of things. But with them being senior, that they're going to get paid back first. So 5 to 15%. And obviously, at an early stage in our appraisal, we are looking at a blended rate of finance to assess, what typical finance costs there may be. But at this stage now, we're looking into it in much more detail. We're assigning specific returns to the specific makeup of that 100% project costs there. So an example might be when structuring your finance package, if you like, is that if you're going to potentially use your equity or your investors' equity to purchase the land, then you're potentially using senior debt then as 100% of the development costs. If you've not got enough equity to purchase the land, you may use some debt to fund up to maybe 70% of the purchase. Then you plug that gap, and then you've obviously got to plug a bit of a gap either with equity or mezzanine finance for the whatever the gap is with the development costs. So there's lots of different ways, as discussed, of putting the structure in place. We're going to discuss different structures in a further video, but this is just a bit of an introduction into the capital stack, and starting with the bedrock that is senior debt. Equity is right at the top. Now, mezzanine is usually provided by a specialist provider. Going to go into more detail on a subsequent video, but it's normally provided by a specialist lender, and it's usually used to plug the gap between equity and senior debt, if there is any. So yeah, senior debt, senior to everything else, takes first charge. There's your kind of percentages that you may be able to look at raising, and you'll be looking at interest rates typically between 5 and 15%. So hopefully you found that this short little video useful, and look forward to you joining me on our next video going into mezzanine finance. We've got a subsequent video on equity finance as well, and then we'll be moving on within the funding section to other areas such as cash flow and raising money from investors, and risk money mindset terminology and all things like that. So thanks very much for joining, and I look forward to catching up with you very, very soon. Take care.